My whole entire life, as far back as I could remember when I was a really, really young child, was that I always wanted to be a parent. And at the age of 33 years old, 7 years ago, I became just that. And it changed my life forever in more ways than one. If I could pick one thing that was the biggest blessing that God has ever given me, besides getting to meet my own mother, was being a father to my son, Maximus Moschetti. And it's been a journey, and it's a journey that is continuing on to this day. And parenthood is a very, very interesting topic, and it's different for all of us parents out there that have children. Every experience is unique to itself. So I want to give my perspective. I want to tell you what parenthood has been like for me personally, and a little bit of how it's been for my wife from my perspective. Now, it doesn't mean that this is the end-all, see-all of parenthood. This is just my experience and my perspective. And I guarantee you, a lot of you out there that are also fellow parents are going to be able to resonate a lot with what I'm saying, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So I wanted to come back for another solo episode to give you my perspective on what life has been like for me being the father to the most incredible 7-year-old boy on planet Earth, Maximus Moschetti. And here is parenthood. You're now listening to the Sauce Talk Podcast. What up, everybody? It's your boy Al Siggity Sauce. Welcome back to the Sauce Talk Podcast. I'm back here with another solo episode focusing on one of the most important parts of my life, which is parenthood. And, you know, the past year or two, I feel like I'm reaching my higher self. I can't really describe it, but since I'm not really obsessed with numerology in a way, but my favorite number of all time is the number 3. So I was always convinced within myself that my best years of my life were going to be in my 30s. And I thought so for the longest time for many other reasons. They ended up indeed being the best years of my life, but not in the original way that I perceived them, if that makes sense. You know, it is in my 30s that, ended up being the foundation and the very building blocks of me personally reaching my higher self. The true turning point in my life where everything, starts to come together, starts to come to fruition. I feel as I just reached my 40s, I turned 40 last month, that I'm starting to really achieve my higher self, and this overall realization that bend in my mindset where things were right in front of me all the time, but they were kind of like unable to grasp, if that makes sense. It seems that now like all the dots in my life are kind of finally connecting, and not even just my life in general, but my overall consciousness and like my overall understanding of my personal life as I know it, and just my being in tune with the universe, if you will. It kind of seems like it's starting to finally crest over that hill, that unattainable light that I always saw that was dangling in front of my face like a piece of meat in front of a pit bull, but I never could quite grasp it. I feel like now it's starting to touch my fingertips, and it's finally starting to come around, and the light is visible, and it's a strange feeling, even though it's a positive occurrence. It's foreign, it's new, but it's exciting at the same time. And, one thing that I know for a fact is the true fire starter for this realization, for this overwhelming sense of finally understanding myself and the relation of myself with the universe is, the birth of my son. I gave birth to my son, oddly enough. My favorite number is 3. So I gave birth to my son. Well, I didn't give personal birthday. My wife obviously did, but you know what I mean. When I was 33 years old, I mean, it couldn't have been a better time frame, if you will. And, for my next episode, since that event was so important to me, I wanted to give you all the perspective of me as a parent and what parenthood was like for me and how these 30s that I thought were going to be the best years of my life, superficially speaking, or just, in general, I was misunderstood. And like I said, they are the best years of my life, but it's because they were also some of the hardest years of my life. But it helped build these foundation blocks of what's to come. And I think actually my 40s are going to be definitely some of the best. It's kind of like, there's like before Christ and after death. It's kind of like for me, the age of 40, which I am right now, is kind of like the 30s were BC and the 40s are my AD, if you will, if we're going to compare to just pivotal moments in history that turn, like the moments of the Bible. And, even though I'm not the most religious person on planet Earth, that's what I truly feel. And being a parent has absolutely just, changed my life. It's an ongoing process. I'm constantly learning, constantly finding more, not only about myself, but about my son. And it's a wild trip. And anybody who's a parent out there knows, exactly what I'm talking about. And, it's a God-given, beautiful blessing to be able to be a parent. Because there's people out there that, they don't have the ability to be parents. So not only am I fortunate that I can have a child with my partner, with my wife, my soulmate, but to be able to just experience it in general is absolutely a God-given blessing. And whether you believe in God or not, I mean, there most definitely is a higher power, and the ability to give birth. Birth is such a magical process. The childbirth is, after going through it, not personally witnessing, because my wife is the one who actually went through it, just to be able to sit there and witness the whole growth of the child and everything, and the placenta, and it's wild. And like, you read about it in books when you're a kid, and if you have siblings, you see your siblings get born and all this stuff, but you really don't know until you're having a child of your own and you get to actually experience the whole process, at least from my perspective, because I'm not having the child. I can only imagine how that is to actually have the growing seed inside of you. That must be a totally different, ethereal experience. But I'm just speaking from my perspective. It's nuts. And like, it's to say it's life-changing is an absolute understatement. And it's been a wonderful thing. And a little fun fact about me is that, as far back as I could remember, when I was a child, I always loved children. Whenever I was around little cousins or just anybody for that matter, I always had a wonderful time just like playing with kids and stuff. And I took a liking to them. And, so it was from that moment forth that I was like, you know what? I need to be a dad and I really want to have kids. And, until you're really at the time where you're actually going to have kids, you don't really understand what it's like. So for my whole life, I said I was going to have 3 kids. And that reason was kind of sparked from, my mother was a big person, a believer of dreams. She was a very spiritual woman. And, she used to always interpret dreams. She had a dream book and we'd always have, conversations. This is like in the 90s. And I remember being a kid and having some sort of weird dream. And I don't remember, because it was so long ago, the actual details of the dream. But in the dream, there were 3 ice cream cones, right? So when you interpret whatever it was at the time that we interpreted the dream to be, the 3 ice cream cones represented children. So it was not predestined, but we always thought like, okay, I'm going to have 3 kids because, I interpreted this dream and I thought of this fictitious, or not even fictitious, but something that was, I don't know. I don't want to say that interpreting dreams is incorrect, because it's not, but it's just, I don't know. I was just caught up. It's not good to get caught up in that stuff sometimes, but for my whole life, I thought I was going to have 3 kids and I wanted it. But boy, was I wrong. And this is the reason why. It was until that I actually had a child, which I'm going to dive into deeper soon. But I realized, like, I don't know if I should have 3 kids. I went from really wanting them to then saying, whoa, I don't know. After having a 1, this is a little, this is a little tough. But me and my wife, so when we first started dating, that's a whole nother topic of, it's an interesting story. And maybe one day I'll cover it onto this, because what I like about these solo episodes, most of we're going on the 3rd year of the Sauce Talk podcast. And for the first 2 years, it was all about, how do I describe it? I was interviewing guests all the time. So I was including myself in my podcast, but just a little bit, just little pieces here and there. And, it was until that I decided to start doing these solo podcasts that I realized, like, these are going to be like journal entries and small peeks into the window of my life, little bits at a time. And after I started brainstorming about doing solo episodes, and I did my nostalgia one a couple months ago, and all this is like, I'm realizing, like, these are literally journal entries, and they're there for my son. This is, he just turned 7 April 1st this month. And, obviously I'm releasing this Parenthood episode in his birth month, which is really great and sentimental to me. But I realized, like, man, one day my son's going to watch these and he's going to get to learn about me. And, it's weird. Like, it's goosebump inducing. And I'm like, wow, like, these really are just me jotting down things that I never actually physically written down, because I'm not really big into writing or reading. But I am a more visual person, and I like to talk, and I like to get cerebral with audio. And since I'm here and I'm pouring out my heart, I'm like, wow, one day my son's going to read these. And these are kind of like love letters to him. Even though I'm interviewing somebody else, I realize, like, this is all really for him. This is going to be, I wish I had tons of video and audio of my mother. I have my dad, he's still alive, thank God. But, my mother meant the world to me, and to be able to hear her voice and see her speak would be nuts. And this episode is I'm going to be crying probably a lot this episode. I'm going to try not to, but it's just inevitable, because this is an emotional topic. Parenthood is a very, very personal thing. And I'm willing to, I'm always here capturing other people's stories. And I think it's righteous, and I think it's morally just if I start giving a bit of myself to the world, to just, not even the playing field, but just to let you know that I'm not here just to hear everybody else. I'll give you some of me too. It's okay. Because some of my guests get vulnerable, and, I want to be vulnerable too. And I'm pretty much an open book. Anybody that knows me knows that I'm a real open book. And, I just want to tell my story in parenthood and what it was like for me, to be a parent, because it's not always roses and daisies. The grass isn't always greener on the other side. I mean, giving life is always greener because it's a beautiful process, but it's a difficult process, and you have to really self-reflect, and, both parties have to really want it for it to be successful. And that's kind of, what I'm here for. And me and my wife, in the beginning, when me and my wife started dating, believe it or not, even though she's one of the most fantastic mothers that I've ever come across, she didn't really want kids when she was younger. So you got to remember, there's a 5.5 year difference between me and my wife. And even though that's not much year-wise, it is a great deal when it comes to life experience and just perception on the earth. If you have a 17-year-old talking to a fucking 23-year-old or a 22-year-old, there's a big difference there. There's a big difference there in mentality. There's a big difference there in just worldviews. It's a big gap. It's a big time. So when I first started dating my wife, since there's a 5.5 year difference between us, she didn't really want kids. That wasn't really her thing. But her and I met in 2011. We got married in 2017, bought our house in 2018, had our son in 2019. So from the moment we got married to the son, it was like 1 year after another, just everything just cascaded. And, she was willing to do it. And we didn't, Maximus wasn't a mistake. Now, there's plenty of children out there that happen to be quote unquote mistakes, even though no childbirth is a mistake and it shouldn't be considered that way. But we actually planned for Max. Doesn't make me better than anybody else. I'm just telling you my side of the story. And, we planned for him. We had him. And I'll never forget the day when she filmed me and she surprised me. And, I always tell her to this day, I know exactly the night it happened. And she thinks I'm an asshole for saying that. But it's just, I truly feel that way. Not to get graphic, but I definitely remember the day. I'm like, we're having the baby. He's in there right now. And she's like, no. You're foolish. How could you know? It's multiple times. No, I'm telling you, this day, it's like I knew everything. I have this intuition, okay? I'm legit. I'm a very spiritual guy, and I knew we had it. I just knew it was the time. And regardless of that, regardless of me thinking I knew when the actual conception was of my son, I never forget her showing me that it was positive. And like my life changed from that moment. Like when she showed me that pregnancy test, it's like, we're here. Like my whole life, like I told you guys, I imagined having a child and I wanted one so bad. I thought I was going to have 3. And the moment's finally there. We planned for it. We prepped. It doesn't mean shit. You could never prepare yourself to have a child ever until you have one. You could buy every piece of furniture you want, read every fucking book. Doesn't mean shit because every child, every situation is 1,000% different than the other. Every childbirth is totally 1,000% unique. And there's no way you could prep for anything like that. Once that happened, the kid came. We had the bridal shower. The baby shower, the whole thing. It's there. The excitement is building. You're sitting there like, oh my God, we're finally going to have a kid. You get all the stuff. You get the crib ready. You get the bedroom. Literally, you are prepping yourself for what you think is going to be not an easy task, but you're like, I got all my ducks in a row. This process isn't going to be as hard as I think it will be. And boy, were we, and I'm sure everybody else that had a kid, fucking wrong. Once the kid came, everything changed. I'm talking from the moment that you're there. You can't predict how long your wife's going to be in labor, right? Dude, my wife was in labor 24 plus hours. We were in there and she didn't dilate enough. Like we were right under the cusp. So unfortunately, we waited all this time and she had to get a C-section anyway, which she didn't want to do. And I don't blame it. What woman would want a C-section? They're cutting through your skin, your fat, your muscles, your abdomen, your tendons. Like this is some serious shit. And the recovery is way worse. And you stay in the hospital. Obviously, you all probably know this, but if you didn't, if you have a C-section, you're in the hospital a little longer than you normally would because the woman has to heal and there's certain criteria she has to meet before she can be released. And rightfully so, because you just got your shit fucking hacked up giving birth to this baby. And we were sitting there and I was already tired. I know my wife's more tired than I am, of course, but I'm just giving you my perspective. I was already tired. We're in there. and waiting, and she's in pain. She had to get the epidural. Once she got the epidural, that kind of evened her out, and that was probably the biggest blessing for her. And I'll never forget when we're in there. Oh, I'm going to try not to cry. I was frightened, man, because the more you get to the actual birth of your child, the anticipation is rising, but the nerves are shoot. Like, this is like life is about to smack you in your fucking face so hard. You have no idea what is coming. And we're in there, and she's got to get the C-section, and they have like this thing in front of her, like from her like stomach down, so you can't see what's going on. I'm in the upper portion, like holding her head, and oh my God, I remember they start cutting into her. And for some reason, my wife felt like she couldn't breathe. She's like gasping for air. And then if anybody knows me, knows I'm like one of the most sensitive people on planet Earth. And I start hyperventilating and crying. And I'm holding my wife's head like, it's okay, are you all right? And she's going, she can't like breathe. I don't know if it's like the suction of what they're trying to get out. I don't know what it was, but she was gasping for air and she felt like she couldn't breathe. So I start panicking and I'm holding her. It's going to be okay. You're going to make it. Whoa. All this shit is going on. The shit you see in the movies when it's chaotic in the ER, that happens. It's like, I don't know what to do. There's fucking blood. There's this and that. I'm fucking freaking out. And then I hear the cries of my son. My whole life, I have my son at 33 years old. My whole life, I imagine of having a son, driving around every day, the closer I get to having my son, not even knowing his name yet, not knowing what he's going to look like, not knowing what he's going to sound like, not knowing his cries. All that stuff just starts hitting you. Like, this is the moment. And I don't know, man. It's just the fact that you make love to somebody and your seed implants in their egg and it just builds this all to this moment. Like, all this stuff just avalanches and starts coming down. And I hear the first cries of my son and I fucking lose it, dude. I lose it. I immediately lose it. It was the most beautiful thing I've ever heard. It was him crying. And I knew he's finally here. Made sure my wife was all right. She looked like she was a little relieved. But then I saw my son. And I get to cut the umbilical. And I was just... I remember just crying to the doctor, just saying he's so beautiful. Just, he's swollen. He's got... all white and like crying and, fluid, amniotic fluid on him, whatever you call that. And I never forget like just how like joyous I was inside. And I finally got to meet Maximus Moschetti, my son. Now his name is another topic. My name is Albert Moschetti Jr. Now, everybody in my family thought I was going to name my son Albert Moschetti III. But the thing about that is each person is their own. Everybody is unique. And I wanted my son to be my son. I didn't want him to be necessarily a purposeful extension of me. I want him to be his own. So when me and my wife were trying to figure out what to name our son, the one thing is, first of all, I hate my name, Albert. That is the corniest fucking name to me of all time. And I just didn't want to have that for our son. Everybody thought I was going to be the third, but I also don't like outside pressure. I'm one of those people where I'm going to do what the fuck I want, when I want, and how I want. And I knew everybody thought I was going to name him Albert III. I'm not doing that. That's immediate. So that was like an easy choice for me. And when me and my wife were deciding his name, we thought a bunch of different names, cool names. And I wanted something unique and different. And so did my wife. And my wife's favorite movie of all time, well, one of them, because she has a bunch, is Gladiator. And his name is Maximus in the movie Gladiator. So she said, well, how about the name Maximus? So it was her idea at first. Then I thought to myself, I remember stories of my mother and what she wanted to name me. Now, I'm half Puerto Rican, half Italian. My mother was the Puerto Rican one. She was born there and everything. My father was born in this country. He wasn't born in Italy. Doesn't make him less Italian. I'm just giving you a fact. And my mother loved Italian culture. Even though she was Puerto Rican, she made Italian food better than any fucking Italian in my family. And that's a goddamn fucking fact. May God strike me dead right now. And she wanted to name me Maximiliano, which is Max for short, just like, short for Maximus is Max, but she wanted to name me Maximiliano. And she always told me that. And she kind of got bullied into naming me Albert Jr. So when my wife brought the idea to me to name our son Maximus, I thought of that story immediately. I said, you know what? My mom wanted to name me Maximiliano. Why not? That sounds so similar, and it's still Max for short. I think it's just kind of meant to be. So I didn't even really put up much of a fight. First of all, I don't really believe in being over dominant or my wife and vice versa. I feel like when you're in a relationship, you have to mutually agree on something. So we immediately thought, after that seems like the right choice. So we decided to name him, Maximus. And I love that name. I absolutely adore it. I don't know any other Maximuses. I'm sure there are out there, obviously. It's a name. But I don't know any other Maximuses on the planet. And I thought it was kind of cool that, we could, name him that. So that's what his name became. It became Maximus Moschetti, inspired by Maximus from, Gladiator. And like I said before, preparation for a kid, you can't prep for it. And we were in there 24 hours, and I see these memes all the time about the bed and the dad complaining about the back pain from the bed. And those memes are real. Now, with that being said, how dare we complain? Because especially my wife's situation with the C-section, she got cut open, her muscles, abdomen, through all of that stuff. And I'm here bitching about my back. Doesn't change the fact that the back fucking was shot. But how fucking dare you? And yes, of course, how fucking dare you? But from that moment on, it was rough. And the reason why I say rough, it was beautiful, it was amazing. But the first 2 years of my son being alive were probably the hardest years of my life. And I'll explain why. And I'm also going to give you some funny insight. So I had a kid before my old friend Evan did. We're not friends anymore. That's a whole nother topic in itself. But I remember something that stuck with me. Anybody that knows me knows when I talk to you, I'm going to keep it a $150. I'm always going to keep it a buck. I'm going to give you the honest answer all the time, no matter what. And, I had told him when he got married and then he was having a kid after. And I remember always telling him, like, look, man, it's very hard in the beginning. And I'm going to explain why it was hard for me and my wife. But it's very hard. But just put this in your mind. I was trying to give him some motivational thoughts. Put this in your mind that when you get past that 2-year hump, it's going to get easier. It's just very, very difficult in the beginning for many reasons. And you guys are going to bicker. You're not going to have sleep. It's going to really put a wrench in your relationship that you thought was easy. And now it's totally different for a lot of things. It's a culture shift. And I told him, and then months later, after he had his first son, Charlie, he says, bro, you were the only friend that kept it real with me and told me what it was really like. All my other friends said it was easy peasy. It's the best thing they ever did, blah, blah, blah. But he's like, you're the only one that kept it real with me and told me that it was going to get hard, because it did. And then he has his whole story on how, on how that came to be. But that's his whole story. But it's just to tell you the fact that it's tough. And I know you parents listening to this right now, you can resonate. It's fucking hard, especially in the beginning. You got to remember, I'm a railroader. I'm a train conductor, right? And most of my life on the railroad, I worked nights because I liked it. I don't like waking up super early in the morning. I'd rather wake up, have my breakfast, go to the gym, go to work, get home midnight, sleep till 10 in the morning and do it all over again. Well, when you have a kid, you have that schedule, life isn't so easy anymore. So when we had my son, I was on a later job. It had some built-in overtime, and I work on the railroad, so there's a lot of, the beauty of working on the railroad is you could change your schedule a lot. Also, it's easier depending on how much seniority you have. So at the time, I was working a job that signed up at like 4 something, got off at like 1 something in the morning. It had built-in overtime in the shift, so I was, even though I was only working 5 days a week, since my job had built-in overtime Monday through Friday, I made some extra coin just for being, I got an early quit because I yarded the whole thing. But I wasn't fucking going to sleep till like 2 something in the morning, 2:30 when we first had my son. And, I thought I could hang and I fucking couldn't. It was, I'm getting home in the beginning. When you have a child, they gotta sleep a lot. This is like mandatory. They sleep a lot in the beginning, and then you wake up every hour, every 2 hours, change your diaper, feed them, put them back down. It's just like how it is the first like 5-6 months. They're going through it. And when you're getting home, sleeping at 2:30, maybe putting my head down for fucking an hour, then my kid's up. My wife's already been home sleeping or trying to since 7 p.m. at night or whatever. She's already been up. So now you got to switch roles. You got to fucking sit there and change things. And that's when it becomes extraordinarily difficult because you get home. Now it's your turn, but I just worked the fucking 11-hour shift. Now I got to go home, barely get sleep, wake up, feed the baby, change the diaper. Hopefully my wife gets some sleep because she's been fucking going through it all day. And then you're just going through it. And the baby wakes up at 7 a.m. Now I'm getting 3 hours of sleep, waking up, doing it all over again. You're trying to figure out and coordinate with your wife. Okay, you taking a 2-hour nap now, then I'll take it. And here's where life got difficult for me because something to know about me is I'm kind of a nervous Nelly. Not like if you meet me, you're not going to think I'm nervous, but I worry a lot. I'm a worrier. My mom was a worrier. She passed it down to me. My dad's a nervous guy. So like all that stuff got passed down to me. And this is stuff that I realized later on in life, childhood traumas and all those things. It all comes to a point and comes to fruition when I had my son. And there was a lot of self-realization and self-reflecting. And I'm so nervous. And then when you have the kid, like I said, you mentally prepare for the child. You read whatever book you want. And it could tell you how to do things. But once you have the kid, that kid's different than what you read. And just life becomes difficult. And I panicked and I froze. Sometimes I realize with me that when life gets tough in that way, with loved ones, I freeze. Anything else, I truck through. But like when my mom was going through cancer, I froze. And I didn't know what to do. And I was constantly trying to escape. Instead of being by her side every dying minute, I didn't know what to do. So I resorted to drugs and just trying to numb because I couldn't. When I get like this, man, I get so nervous. I don't know how to cope. My system shuts down. And when we had my son, I shut down. And it was one of the worst things that I've ever done in my life. And I'll explain why. If I could give any advice to any man out there that is about to have a kid, do not be the man that I was and do what I do. Because I'm not perfect, dude, and I made major mistakes. The mistakes that I made were as follows. So my wife got a C-section. Like I told you, cut open. The recovery is weeks. They're in massive pain. They can barely stand up. When we come home, after both of us not getting any sleep, now it hits you. You're not in the hospital anymore, Papa. You're not there for these nurses to take over and show you how to swaddle, show you how to wipe the ass of your fucking newborn, show you the signs of when he's hungry and when he's gassy. How do you differentiate the two and know what's wrong with your kid? You don't get taught that. You're home now. When you're there in the hospital, you're fighting staying awake. You're fighting just sanity. You don't even know. You're in a dream world and in a you know, how do I put it? Like, you're in this euphoric state. You have a child, but then like all these things are like just hitting you in your head. So you're kind of just like, you're like Weekend at Bernie's. You're just fucking a zombie, right? Then you get home. Now it's time, Papa. Now it's time for you and your wife to do this shit on your own. This is it. There's nothing else. And it's a fucking whirlwind. And when my wife and I came home and it's time for the kid to get a bath, I fucking panicked. And then you might say to yourself, are you a fucking pussy? You can't give your kid a bath? Yeah, I'm fucking frightened of injuring my kid. I'm a pussy. I was. And, you know, I should have took over there, been a considerate enough husband to help my wife. And I fucked up. I'm going to cry so much during this. I fucked up. And her and I have had these discussions and we've talked about it. But I was so frightened. Like, I can't describe, like, I was even scared to hold my kid. I didn't want to hurt him. I didn't know, like, when I'm holding my son, all these crazy thoughts are going through my head. Like, oh my God, I know the skull is you know, because you're reading all this shit and you know SIDS and all this. You're like, fuck. Like, you got to understand, a person that's a warrior, a person that's nervous, a person that, like myself, that can't handle these like severe time frames and emotion. It was so overwhelming for me. I fucking froze and I panicked and I told my wife, like, how do I bathe him? Like, I don't know what to do. Like, I was scared to even hold him. And of course it temporarily fucked my marriage up because now my wife is in excruciating pain and I'm basically making her get up to help bathe the kid with me when she should be laying there and I should be man enough to take control of the situation. And I wasn't man enough. I became a sissy and I couldn't do it. And it's one of my biggest regrets in life. So that's why I say, like, if any of you out there, you're ready to have a kid and you're in the beginning, you got to try to, I don't know if you're like me or not. This might be easy for you, but we're all different. And for me, I was so nervous. I didn't want to hurt my son. I didn't know what to do. So I needed her assistance when she really needed mine. So if you could do anything, don't do what I did. Get the balls, get the courage, and just help. Now, some of you might hear this and be like, you're beating yourself up. Nah, man. My wife was cut open, bro. I wasn't cut open. I was healthy. I was tired. I was stressed, but I was fucking healthy. And the least I could have done was do that. But I told you, I realized this about myself when a time gets really rough emotionally like that. What's funny is because my wife was the one hurting and that's what ruined me, is seeing her hurt ruined me. Same thing when I watched my mom going through cancer, going through chemo, losing all her hair. It destroyed me. But I didn't know how to handle it, so I vanished. Same thing with my wife. I didn't know how to handle it, so I was ghost. And it was a bad decision for that time. And going through that I realized a lot of other stuff. Me and my wife didn't realize how much we enjoyed doing what we want when we wanted to. And having a kid throws such a wrench in that it's, if you're like me and my wife, it's tough. It's tough. And it was insane because when you don't have a village, right? They always say it takes a village. And I realize after having our son, it does take a village. And when you don't have that village, those first 2 years, my people, were tough. My wife will tell you the same thing. They were tough. Now, for the first 3 months, my wife stayed home. She didn't go back. So we had my son April 1st. My wife went back to work July. I was still working. I took the first 3 weeks off of work. And then I went back at the end of April. And at the time, I was still on that rough job, that one that got off at like 2 a.m, and I'm getting no sleep. But I'm waking up, at least my wife's still there. And she's still helping me deal with being a pussy with my son. But it was still an amazing time. It's just that, it took me a couple of weeks to really get in the zone mentally and realize like, okay, I got to pull your fucking pants up, stop being a bitch. You got to help out. And I did. But even though during these times, those first 5 months, man, everybody's situation is different. And sometimes kids sleep through the night after a month, our situation wasn't like that. What was really good though about it was for the first month and a half, our son slept in our bed, which is another thing. Because some parents, they'll go years and their kid still sleeps in their bed, but that's no good. So it was very important to us, since me and my wife are very self-sufficient and we like our space on our own, that we pushed for this method that I'm about to speak about. So we put our son in a bassinet on the side of our bed, like every parent does. You go in a bassinet. My son hated the bassinet. And after no bullshit, after the first week, he wasn't having it. The only way he would sleep comfortable is between my wife's legs on our bed. And she would wrap her legs he would sit in between and she would do it like this so that he wouldn't fall out. That was the only way he was comfortable. He hated the bassinet. So what we started to do was, we're like, all right, when he has to take naps during the day, let's start putting him in his crib, so that he gets used to sleeping in an environment that he's not used to sleeping in. And then hopefully we could transition him. And it worked for us. Doesn't work for everybody. My son has been sleeping on his own since a month and a half. In the crib on his own. What helped with that was we got something called an owlet. If you don't know what an owlet is, you buy the combo pack. It's the monitor, and it's also a sock that you put on your baby, because SIDS is another thing. And this is another thing that fucking stressed me out. See, my wife, when it comes to being stressed, I get way easily more stressed than her. She's much, much stronger. I'm more the female in our relationship when it comes to these things than her. She's more the male. And I can't get it together sometimes. And this sock really helped, because you have those problems with SIDS where kids suffocate themselves because they don't have the arm strength to flip themselves over, whatever, and they die. So we got the owlet, and what it does is it measures via an app. It measures their heart rate, all this stuff. So it got to the point where we could wake up, see the heart rate, and know that he's about to wake up, judged based on that. And also, if you are dead asleep and the thing goes off, it plays like a loud song so you can wake up and hear it and make sure and flip your kid over. God forbid you had to do that. So that kind of helped with that whole process. But it was tough and getting a hang of things. And the real realization for me was when my wife had to go back to work in July, because unfortunately this ain't the 1940s, 1950s. Unless you single-handedly as a man make $200,000 to $300,000 a year, you both got to work, because it's so goddamn fucking expensive, not only to live in 2026, but to live in this country in 2026. And it just got fucking insane. So we both had to work. And, the sad part about that is, my wife's home for 3 months, really getting to learn her child, learn how to be a parent, because like I said, you could read any book you want. It's not going to make you really understand what being a parent is truly like. So after you're getting the hang of it, after 3 or so months, my wife has to go back to work. What does that mean? That means that it's time for me to really pick my pants up, because I'm going to be home during the day and go to work at 4 o'clock at night. So that means when my wife leaves to work at 7, I'm going to be there from 7 in the morning till 4 p.m. raising the kid on my own. And that was a fucking shocker. I'm talking, You're the dad, the mom, the maid, the everything. And years ago, life wasn't like this. I came from an era where the mom did everything, dad did nothing. My dad didn't raise me. He's a great dude and all that, but he didn't raise me. He didn't change my diapers. He didn't teach me how to be a man. My parents separated when I was in first grade, okay? So my mom was the mom and the dad. That's just how it was for me. And I had to, in this day and age, both parents usually, I'm sure you all watching this now are like, yeah, I agree. Me and my wife are doing this all together. Not like it was years ago. So I had to be the mom, the dad, the grandma, the grandpa, the whole thing. And that was when it really hit in. And that was one of the hardest times of my life, as well as the most incredible, most beautiful time I ever had in my life. And the reason why it was the most beautiful was because years ago, when the dad would work all the time, right, and the wife would stay home, they'd miss out on the first solid food they ate, the first crawl they did, the first walking session they had, the first goo goo gagas and coos they had. I was there. I didn't miss none of that. And I'm very thankful for that. I'm thankful for my job that I'm able to have those work arrangements where I can work nights if I want to, late afternoons. But that's what it was. And, there were some really, really rough times during then, because when I'm home and my wife's at work, I don't have a mother figure to fall on. My mom passed away in 2009. My wife's mom lives in Florida. My dad, who lives upstairs from me because I own a 2-family home, he works still, and he ain't about that life. He's not. He never raised me, let alone he's going to help raise my son. With that being said, though, my dad now is the biggest help I could ever have. But it took until my son was able to shit, piss, and do all these things on his own for him to really be able to step up, because my dad's a nervous guy just like I am. And he just didn't, I don't know if it was he didn't want to show the effort to do it, but he just didn't do it. He wasn't about that life. So it was very difficult in the beginning. I had to do all this stuff myself. So you figure I'm home from 7 a.m. to 4, running on no sleep. I'm on that job that gets off at 2 a.m. I'm sitting here. I got to remember, my wife, I can't fuck up her milk because that shit took so much time for her to pump. I got to know how to make sure my kid eats it when he does, know how to do this, know how to attain the rashes. And the hardest part is figuring out what's wrong with your child when they're crying. Let me tell you something, yo. There was times when my son was crying, and he was a great baby, but there was times and I couldn't figure it out. That's the thing, is like when you're a parent and your kid cries, they're not speaking yet. They're a couple months old, okay? They could be gassy. They could be hungry. They could be icky because they have shit sitting in their fucking ass, covering their cock and balls. Or if they're little girls, the vajayjay, whatever, covering shit everywhere, and they're uncomfortable. You as a parent have to play guessing game. And that's one of the most difficult things ever. And sometimes when I was playing guessing game, as a person who jumps the gun, as a person who's such a nervous Nelly and a warrior in general, I want everything to go perfect. I got a little bit of OCD. So when something gets out of my control, sometimes I have a panic attack. And being a father, trying to raise a kid for the first time, thinking you know what you're doing and you don't, and you're alone and nobody can help you, I felt so helpless. And sometimes when I couldn't figure out what was bothering my son, I'd have a panic attack. There was times where I left my son in his crib or wherever, safely, wherever he was, and I'd go in the other fucking room. And I know some of you parents could probably relate. Scream in a fucking pillow. Scream and bang the floor because I'm panicking. What do I fucking do? Praying to God. I'm not even that religious, and I'm praying to my deceased mother. Help me, please. Like, I'd give anything at many moments to have my mother there with me to help. And I've never been envious in my life, but when I had my son and I had to raise him, all of you motherfuckers that have this strong support system of grandparents from both sides, totaling at 4 people that could fucking help out with aunts and uncles. I'm an only child. I got nobody. My wife has 2 sisters and they fucking live in Florida with their mother. So for me and my wife, and we have nobody to reach to, my dad's upstairs, but in the infancy stages, my dad can't really help. My father-in-law lives a couple towns over. He's got his own situation. We're alone. We're alone. And I've never been envious in my life until this time. I fucking hated all you motherfuckers that had support systems. And I literally was painfully envious. And in those moments, I'd have crash outs by myself and freak out. And the worst part about it is I'd figure it out and we'd do the thing. And you know, I'd go on my day. We had a lady that would come. We didn't even have really a babysitter. We had a sweetheart. She was basically a babysitter. It was my sister-in-law's best friend growing up's mother who used to work in daycares and stuff. And if we didn't have her, I don't know what I would do without Rose. Oh, I love you, Rose. I miss you. I wish I need to see you and give you a kiss. I haven't seen her in so long. If we didn't have that woman, what she would do is I would leave for work at like 4 o'clock, 3:30. My wife wouldn't get home till like 5:30. So we needed somebody to watch my son for like an hour. Literally, that's it. So she would come over, take over. I'd leave, only watch him for an hour, whatever. Then my wife would come. And then my wife would be with the kid till 8 o'clock, put him to sleep. So she'd be here 3 hours. That's it. And I'd be there from 7 to 4, the longer majority of the time. And then she'd be tired. She'd go to sleep at night. I'd get home at fucking 1, 2 in the morning. She's already passed out. I'd sleep, wake up in the middle of the night to feed and go back. And this was like a cycle. And then the weekends, you think we'd get a break? No, it'd be us again with the kid. And that's why like that It Takes a Village really resonated with me and my wife, because it truly did. And we didn't have that village. And we were at wit's end. It was tough because we're not getting sleep, both of us. We're struggling so much. We don't even know what day it is, but we're going to work like robots doing this thing. So I eventually I was getting not enough sleep. I'm one of those people that I need at least 6, 7 hours. I can't do it at 3, 4. Some people can function on that. I can't, bro. I can't. It was too hard. And my wife likes to sleep too. And she was struggling. And the problem is this too, is that we're not seeing each other. We have opposite schedules, which we still kind of do. We make it work though. But me and my wife still have opposite schedules because in the morning, my son starts school at 9 o'clock. My wife leaves for work at 7. We got nobody to bring. I'm telling you, it takes a village, dude. I don't know how my fucking mom did it. So we just, for now, I still work nights. I'm going to try to go to morning soon, but it was getting too much. I needed more rest. So I went to a short job, which is railroad terminology for a job that works under 8 hours, but you get paid for 8 mandatory as per union rules. So I was on a job that worked 6.5 hours, which is great. I'd sign up before something. I'd be done by 11 o'clock, go home, at least get 6, 7 hours. Because by that time, my son was sleeping through the night, and it was good. And me and my wife were both getting the hang of being a parent, getting a routine down, cleaning bottles, pump this, we were figuring it out as most parents do. But that time period, man, when we weren't sleeping much together and, we were, dude, it got so bad with me and my wife that I thought we were going to get a divorce. And like, if we never had a kid, things would have been fine. The kid really threw a wrench in it. And I say that respectfully to my son because I wouldn't take it back. I'd have 4 more Maximuses because I love him more than anything. He's more than I could dream of. But it's just the fact of the matter, keeping it real deal Holyfield, it's fucking hard, dude. It's fucking absolutely hard. And me and my wife, we're not getting sleep. We're working opposite schedules. We're not seeing each other. And more importantly, we're not getting alone time together. And by alone time, I don't even mean intimacy, because that's also important. We're not having date nights. I'm watching my friends and the kids a month older going out having drinks with their wife. And like I said, I fucking envy you pieces of shit, because you don't realize what it's like to be on my side of the fence. And I would have gave anything. Dude, me and my wife didn't go on our first date night until like a year and a half, almost year two, because we didn't have the support system for the early times. We have it now. I told you, my dad's a blessing. And without him, we'd have nothing, literally. Without my dad, he's kept our sanity because he helped when my son was like 2, 3 years old. But in those times, man, we had it so rough. And it's just like nonsensical arguments, because you feel like you're in a cage and you can't breathe. And like I said, I say that respectfully, but when you don't have a village and you have a kid, it's just like you put it this way. Me and my wife love doing what we want when we want. Me and my wife are both very strong personalities. Now, if you guys come to my arcade parties here and you meet my wife, she's a sweetheart. And she is, no matter what. She's one of the best women I've ever met in my life. To say that I'm lucky to know that woman, to be married to that woman, she's literally one of a kind, a gemstone. She's irreplaceable in every sense of the word. But her and I both are very independent. And we both, when we're pissed and we like our space, we get it. When you have a child, all that goes out the window. Me and my wife used to hang out, be bored at 1:30 in the morning. I'm hungry. Let's go to Quick Check and get a sandwich. A luxury that's not really a luxury to a single person. It's just normal way of life. Now, when you have a kid, once you have the kid, you can't even take a shit without fucking planning it. And this is no bullshit. You can't go up and make yourself a sandwich without planning how to make the sandwich. When the kid can't walk yet, the kid can't talk yet, the kid just eats and shits and sleeps and cries, you got to plan everything out. You can't even take a goddamn shower without proper planning. And that was a real culture shock for my wife and for me. Two people that don't like to get told what to do, and two people that love to do as they please when they please. And there'd be, I had to take showers during the day when I was, watching my kid. Bring the carriage in there, bring something in there to keep him strapped in so I could shower and get ready for work while he's sitting there. And then you're in the shower, the kid starts crying. Now you got to shower faster. You got to shit quicker, wipe your ass fast. It's like every part of life that was just normal for you prior. Easy peasy. This ain't hard. It's just natural to you. You got to plan everything now, Papa. You got to walk through life on eggshells now. And everything has to be done with the kid. Now, you want to go to the store and get fucking, oh shit, we ran out of eggs. I need some more formula for my kid. Or I need more Gerber. Oh, fuck, my kid's right here. What do I do now? Now you got to get the car seat ready. Now you got to put him in the car. Now you got to make sure the mirror so you can see him while you're driving. Don't drive too fast, because now you got another life to worry about. Then you go to ShopRite. Fuck, can I fit this carriage in this fucking thing? Now you're moving. Your baby's got to go to the back. Like, all these things start happening. Now, it might seem to you like I'm over exaggerating, and I might be, since I'm a nervous Nelly and I'm passionate, I might be making all of this seem a little too far-fetched. But anybody that's a fucking parent, you'll know it's really not. This is what life is like now. And not to mention, once they start fucking walking, that was a totally different blessing in disguise, but also the most nervous time I've ever had in my life. So when it's about a year, and my son starts walking, that, like I said, that was the best part about, I was very fortunate to have the job that I do, because, I could be home during the day. And most dads, unfortunately, because they have to work when their wife is a stay-at-home mom, whether they make a lot or and they're able to do so, whatever, you're missing out on a lot of those key moments. You're missing out on a lot of those key moments that, are very important on the kid's, childhood development. And you get to see the first time they, like I said before, eat solid foods or walk or crawl. And as a parent, I got to see all that stuff, and I got to try and practice. And I'm very, very thankful that I had that situation, that I could see all those moments of my child when they said their first words, stuff like that. I was there with my son doing it all. As stressful as it was, I was able to see it. So my son starts walking, and when they start walking, that's a totally different thing. Every kid is different. So, depending how you raise your kid or how they react, a lot of parents have to, childproof the cabinets, put gates up and stuff like that. Fortunately, I don't know if that was due to how obsessive I am and how much obsessive compulsive disorder I possess and how careful I am, which is kind of a gift and a curse with me in the development of my child and how he moves around. He's not as hands-on and dirty as some kids and not afraid to get in the mud. My son's not like that, and that was largely my fault. But when you raise a kid, the crazy thing about children is how much you learn about yourself through them. And what I mean by that is children are like sponges, okay? And that goes to say with their sponges and what you tell them, what you teach them, but just the energy you give off, they also absorb. And, since I'm such a careful, nervous Nelly, things like that, my kid's going to pick up on that. And it's not always going to be amazing to the child in your perception, because if I'm very careful and you get dirty, oh, no, don't do that, and I'm constantly cleaning his face instead of letting him get dirty and stuff like that, that's going to affect him in the long run, because he's going to walk around like himself, like on eggshells, and not want to get dirty and things like that. But I mean, I don't know any better. This is who I am. Like, I'm a person who's very particular, and and that's what sucks sometimes about being a parent, is you'll learn more about yourself through your children. And that's one of the examples in how that happens. Seeing how my son moves when he gets his hands dirty and stuff, I'm like, fuck, that was me. That was because I was so on top of him when he was a baby making a mess, when I should have just let him be a baby. But what am I to do? I guess, I don't know, maybe I was brought up that way, and it's just the childhood trauma pumping through me. And it's just, I don't know any better, and that's how I'm, reacting. But more importantly, how you speak and mannerisms and, all your kids pick up on this stuff. If I just raise my voice with certain topics, or I move my hands, or if I wipe my nose too much or something, like, you're going to learn more about yourself through your children. And it's the craziest realization. That's probably the best gemstone that you could be given about being a parent, but also a rough one, because you got to really self-reflect, and that's going to throw yourself right in front of your face. And it's funny how much our children make us realize about ourselves, like, effortlessly by just being them. And you get to see what they pick up on. And then you think, damn, do I really worry too much about that? Or do I touch my hair like that too much? Or you're going to see your kids are mimicking you, and they might even notice stuff about yourself that you don't know and say it to you, because they're so unfiltered and they're so innocent and pure that they just speak their hearts whenever they do, when they learn how to speak. And there's been many times where my son has said stuff to me, and I'm like, wow, I didn't even notice that. Like he'll notice things about me that I don't notice about myself. And that's probably one of my favorite things about being a parent, is how much your child can make you learn about yourself through them. And, it's like you're going through school every day. You're learning more and more, not only how to be a parent, but how to be a better person. And that's why a lot of parents will tell you that when they have children, it changes them forever in more ways than one. But more importantly, it makes them a better person. And I couldn't resonate with that more than today, ever. Because every day my son makes me a better me. And it's a tough journey to get there. And it's still an ongoing battle because I have to realize things about myself that you may not want to look into. And it might be a little shocking to you. And it's not an easy path, but you have to be accepting of it and realize it, because if you want your kid to be a better person, you have to be a better person yourself. Otherwise, your kid is only going to be a reflection of you to a certain extent, while they are also uniquely them. That's one thing that I hate about myself is the thing about parenting that's probably the toughest thing, especially if you're in a relationship with somebody else. And this is one thing that I notice most. Like I was telling you before, how hard it was those first 2 years. Once me and my wife got past those 2 years, those initial 2 years, and we got into a rhythm and we did it, life got easier. It's not that it got super easy, but we got the hang of parenting, got into more of a rhythm. And the more that your child becomes more independent, like can poop on their own, pee, your life gets easier in that aspect. Things get harder in other ways because the worries don't ever stop. They just change their course. And what I mean that is when you're a baby, they can't speak, they can't, so you're figuring out it's a guessing game. And there's nothing more rewarding as a parent than figuring out what's wrong with your child. Like I'm telling you, I could be an Olympic fucking gold medalist, and that's not going to matter more than figuring out what's wrong with your child. That's the most rewarding thing on planet Earth. Oh shit, I figured it out. He was just gassy. Woo! Like that is the illest shit as a parent, the biggest accomplishment. And that's probably the best thing ever is being able to figure out what's exactly wrong with your child when it's wrong. But the wrench that gets thrown into this whole equation of parenting is the differentiating parenting styles. Every parent has their own parenting styles, and that's the clash of the titans. Because like I already told you, I'm the softer one. My wife is the harder one, which automatically just from that, there's two differing views on things. So the hardest part of being a parent is learning to cope with your different parenting styles and learning to work together. Something that me and my wife to this day are still working out the kinks because we have such differing parenting styles, which most parents do. It's only natural. You're your own person. You're not the exact. You might have a lot of similarities with your wife, as I do with mine, and similarities with your husband. But the truth of the matter is, you're different people. So your parenting styles are going to either differ greatly or smaller, but they're still going to differ no matter what. So that's probably one of the biggest challenges of being a parent is learning to harmoniously work out your different parenting styles. And that sometimes, it's like a push and pull. Because one person might be like, it's not a big deal. He didn't do anything that bad. He could still have the iPad. The other one's like, no, but then my wife's like, no, he'll never learn that way. If you keep accepting this, he's going to. So it's just like, it's like a constant like motherfucker. It's really, really difficult being a parent. And that's probably one of the hardest parts, is realizing that you and your partner have different parenting styles, and you got to be able to communicate and figure out a way that you guys can meet some middle ground and accomplish things together. And that's probably the main thing with parenting. And, at my job, I work on the railroad. I told you I'm a passenger conductor predominantly. And I get students and I mentor a lot of kids, not kids, fucking all age. I mentor 60-year-olds. But since I'm on the railroad, I'm a train conductor. I mentor a lot of, new hires when they're at that stage ready to be the conductor. And I tell them all, communication is everything. And not only does that ring true on the railroad, it rings true throughout life, throughout your marriage, throughout your, just communication with you and your friends, with your parents. Communication is everything, especially on the railroad and especially with your wife and your spouse. You need to communicate. You can't hold things inside. You have to speak, because without communication, you have nothing. You have absolutely nothing. It's just like when I was talking before about having a kid and not knowing what's wrong with him. He's communicating to me by crying, but I have to figure out what it is. But if he wasn't crying at all and he didn't say anything, I would have no idea what's wrong with him, if there was even anything wrong with him. And that's why when you're in a marriage and you have a child, communication is everything. If somebody does something that bothers you, you have to express this to your spouse. And the problem is a lot of men have a big issue with wearing their heart on their sleeve, showing what's wrong, and just being vulnerable at all. And I'm not asking you to be soft, but you gotta normalize it, because you have to talk. To be honest, I'm more open than my wife is when it comes to communicating what I'm feeling and stuff. A lot of men don't like communicating how they feel because they feel like they're being viewed as a pussy, or it diminishes their manhood in their eyes. And it's fucking stupid. It's idiotic, because how's somebody going to know you're pissed if you don't tell them? And a lot of people hold things inside. And when you're a parent, you have to communicate, especially when you have different parenting styles. Communication is so important in that state, because it'll help you and help your raising of your child. It'll help even the playing field and ease things out a little bit. And also get the child used to getting the same reaction from both parents. Because the truth of the matter is, when you have different parenting styles, what happens? The kid knows what they can get away with one parent to the other. And it still happens to this day with my son. My son knows I'm more soft, so he'll cry when he wants candy or toys more, and then he'll cry with certain things with my wife that I won't approve of. And it's just a constant push and pull. So that's why I recommend, and I'm still learning to this day how to do this with my wife, you need to communicate with each other. You have to. It's the only way you're going to survive. Being in a relationship, being in a marriage, communication is important. It's going to save your ass on either end, but it's the only way it's going to work. You both have to want it. I can't tell you how many, like I told you, the first 2 years, I thought me and my wife were going to get a divorce. 100%. Some days I was totally checked out. I was like, I don't want this no more. Some days my wife was like, I hate this guy. I am completely done. You have to both want it at the same time. You can't give up at the same time. That's probably the main reason why any relationship works, is both parties don't give up on the same day. They keep trucking and they work it through. And when one person gives up on one day and the other one, it helps. If you both give up on the same day, that's when you know it's over. And it's hard, man, but you gotta, it's like I told my boy Evan, and he was like, you're the only one that kept it real. It's only temporary. And that was the best advice I could have ever given another parent. It's only temporary. You get past that 2-year mark and things start to level out. You start to get more date nights and hang out with each other. It'll get better. You gotta be patient. You gotta be patient with anything. All good things in life come with time. You can't rush excellence. You can't. And that goes the same thing with being a parent, same thing with being just a happy couple. You can't rush excellence. You're going to have disagreements. Life isn't meant to be perfect. I don't know one couple that does not fight. This is not how life works. It's not supposed to be. You're fighting because you care about one another, and you're going to make mistakes, but you have to work it through. You have to talk. I cannot stress that enough. Me and my wife still struggle and learn to this day about these things, but we keep trying. The only way a relationship will work is if both parties are willing to try. Because if you're willing to marry someone, you better fucking believe you're going to be working until you fucking die. Marriages don't plateau. You don't get to a point, okay, we figured it out now. We're good. We're done. Everything's positive now. No, there's always going to be problems. There's always going to be self-reflection. There's always going to be issues. You just have to both be willing to work it out and to listen to each other. Communication is so important. You have no fucking idea. And another thing about children and these things is, the hard thing is to realize when you're raising a child, you weren't always the person that you are today. Meaning, the more experience you go on through life, the more things you learn, you change. Now, your core, you might still be like, for me, people that have known me since middle school, no, I'm still Al. I'm still Al Siggity Sauce at my core. But a lot of other things changed about me and evolved because that's what humans are. We're not going to stay the same. We're not going to be stagnant to a degree. We are going to change. And there's a lot of parts of me that matured, that changed my views on certain things. I got more mature. I got smarter. You have to humble yourself and remember who you once were, and that between you and your child, when you're trying to reprimand your kid and you're trying to, let's say, teach them a lesson or make them understand your point of view as a whole, that there's a fucking 33-year difference between you two. And like I just said, you have to realize you weren't always the person you were back then today. And the same goes for your child. And that's hard to do because you have to realize in your head, man, 2 years ago, my son couldn't talk. Now he can. It's progress, but he's still a child. How was I when I was 6? How was I when I was 30? How was I when I am 40, which I am now? You're a different person. You have a different mind state. So it's difficult, but you have to, when you're reprimanding your child or educating the little ones, you have to do a lot of self-reflecting and realize where they're at. They're going to have to learn from their own mistakes. So when you teach them things, you have to try to remember that, remember where you came from, that you once were there, and try to think, how was I understanding stuff at this age? So you have to kind of systematically and mathematically break things down in a way that you think and simplify things that you think they could understand. And I struggle with this every day. My son asks me so many questions all the time. And you think that when they ask you a question, fuck, nobody's ever asked me this question, because when you're growing up, you just learn things on your own and you go on with it. But like, I'll listen to songs with my son, and my son's a very curious boy, just like me. And, I kind of owe a lot to my wife like that. My wife she's a godsend, man. That's like my homie. Like, she is the perfect woman for me. Ideal in many ways than one. She's a gemstone, a true one of one. But she talks to my son a lot, and I'm very thankful for the way she talks to him. I talk to him too in different ways, but when I'm not there, she talks to him, and he's such a curious boy. And we'll listen to songs in the car, and they'll be like, what's he saying? What is this about? This is a 6-year-old kid. What is he talking about in this song? And it's like, fuck. I got to remember, damn, hold on. Let me think about what he's saying in this song. Try to break it down in a way that my son could understand, which is not easy because our vocabulary, our understanding of life as a whole is way different than a 6-year-old kid. So you have to formulate all this stuff in your head. And let me tell you something, man. Being a parent is tough, especially in those situations. You're like, damn, you really got to think. Like, I never had to think like that. Like, I listen to a song, I understand it, I keep moving. Or when I was a kid and I heard shit, I keep moving. But when you have somebody asking you a cerebral question like that, and they're your own kid, and you have to relay the message and understanding it to them, dumbed it down to their age bracket, that's a fucking tough thing to do. So it's like, it's a constant working towards greatness, not only for your kid, but for you. Your kid ain't going to be great if you ain't working on yourself. And that's the fucking fact. For your kid to be great, you got to be great. And a lot of parents fall short there. They don't realize. And look, I'm not holier than thou. I'm far from perfect. I'm learning every day. But the point that I am learning is all that you need to know. You have to keep learning. That is the only way you or anything you're doing in your life is going to progress. That's the only way your child is going to succeed. You have to learn yourself. You never stop learning. And the moment you fucking realize that, it's all going to click. But remember, you're always going to fucking learn. And the hardest thing that I think a lot of people that are listening to this that are parents will relate to is I often think of how I was when I was a child. And, you know, during my personal parental journey, when I'm self-reflecting and I'm trying to realize things before I make a decision, is how were you when you were a kid? What did you fucking put your parents through? And that's a fucking rough realization. I couldn't imagine my son putting me through what my parents put me through. Like it's fucking frightening to think about it. I mean, you know, I did a lot of crazy shit when I was a kid. Like a lot of fucking crazy shit. And I could only imagine, like, if my son did half the shit that I did, and there's a good possibility that it might happen. I mean, I know we're in a different time period, and you know, life is different now. But I mean, when I think about that stuff, and oh my God, it's fucking frightening. Especially nowadays, everything's so different with the opiate epidemic and drug use, and like, you know, kids feel peer pressure, man. And, you know, being in school is so hard, man. So the one thing that I also could say to parents, and mind you, like I'm saying all this stuff to you guys while still being a student. I'm just giving you my perspective on life and trying to just let you know what my experience was like. And hopefully that, you know, you can not only resonate and be like, word, yeah, I feel the same way, or it could inspire you to maybe better yourself. That's the whole purpose of this episode here, was to give you my perspective in hopes to inspire, you know, others. And you know, there's so many worries, and, you know, a lot of people hate and talk about how soft the world has gotten, right? And trust me, I agree with you. The one thing that I will say personally about myself and my wife, and I speak for both of us when I say we've never hit my son, and we want to go the rest of our lives without doing so. The most any of us or my wife has ever done was like flicked my son in his cheek or something like that. But we've never smacked him in the face, smacked him in his ass hard. None of that. Like stuff, we for sure never beat him with a fucking belt, because me growing up, I didn't get hit much. My mom smacked me a couple times. My dad on my bum once. My mom smacked me so hard once that a fucking blood clot flew out of my nose and hit the fridge because I cursed at her. And, you know, it was deserved. But my mom never really hit me. She was more about grounding. And I understand why she did that now. And now that I have a child and I see him, and I saw him since he was this big, how could I fucking hit him? Like the stories that I've heard of my wife getting her ass whooped by her fucking parents, my mom getting her ass whooped by her parents, or my dad getting whooped, I look at my kid in the face. I say, I could never. How could I ever? I am a man. I have so much more strength than this kid. How could I ever fucking hit him like that? That's absurd behavior to me. To me, grounding is better. And sometimes, man, it's hard, because I know there's parents that do smack their kids, and I'm not telling you that you're 100% wrong. I'm just giving you my view on things, but I can't, bro. I can't do it. I can't. There's no way. I love my son so much. There's no way I could fucking hit him. So me and my wife try to implement a parenting style that strays away from doing that stuff and hitting. we'd rather ground and take away. Because I remember when I was a kid, my mom would ground me and I couldn't go outside, couldn't watch my TV, couldn't play video games. I was losing my fucking mind. Like, I don't want that to happen again. And, it would work to an extent, to a degree. But I just can't. I look at my kid and I can't beat him. Another thing that I can't do is that parents do a lot that is not wrong. It's their parenting style. There's no right or wrong way to parent your child. This is just my views. I have a lot of friends that they're super into baseball or super into football or super into soccer, and they take their kid, and ever since they're fucking born, throwing a baseball bat in their head, throwing a soccer ball, throwing this. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, because some of the best basketball players, football players, baseball players on the planet wouldn't be the way they were if their parents didn't do that to them. But just for me and my wife, it's the same reason we named my son Maximus and not Albert III, because we want our son to be him, uniquely him on his own. He is his own person, and we want to watch him find out what he naturally likes and build upon that and feed into that, whatever he shows us. It's not wrong the other way, but it's just like, we'll put him in some sports, but if he ain't clicking, I'm getting him out. Because I know how I felt when I was a kid. I was a soccer player. And the minute my dad started showing a little too much interest in me playing and tried forcing me to play, I'm out. I ain't doing this. You ain't fucking making me do anything, because I'm very stubborn that way. I do what I want. And I kind of want my kid to have that same thing. I want him to show me what interests him. Now, obviously, certain things you have to, like, my son hates homework. I fucking hated school growing up. I don't let him know that yet. He's too young and too impressionable to tell that type of stuff. I ain't going to tell him that yet, but I fucking hate school. Every time he says that, I go, I know, I feel you, but I try to stray away from that. But our style is to not pressure him to do anything that he doesn't want to do. We want him to find his real interests and feed into it, because I want to know who Maximus is. I don't want him to be Albert III. I don't want him to be me, even though your kids are going to naturally become a part of you or your wife because they're around you. It's a sponge. We have the same DNA. This is natural. And there's nothing wrong with that. And it's cool to see my son doing things that I do. It's cool to see, like, oh, he's really a stem off me, or he looks like my wife, or he's doing things my wife does. Like, I love when I see a good quality of my son and it reminds me of my wife. I love that shit. I married my wife because I love her. So obviously, why would I hate when my son does something or looks like her? Parents that hate that shit are fucking stupid. But, I want him to also uniquely be himself. And that's just, my parenting style, that I let him do his own thing, because that's what he should be doing. Probably the scariest part about being a parent today is how much different life is like now as opposed to back then, because every so often the generations change and everything gets totally different. But the problem is the way things change nowadays is vastly different than it was years ago. Vastly different. And it's changed every year. It seems like technology is gaining 10 years every year that we're living on Earth. And, with social media, things like that, all those, like I was mentioning before, how society is more softer now and they're more in tune with people's emotions, which is a great thing. But it overwhelms these children who don't even know who they are themselves yet. And life gets a little complicated. And it's tough as a parent in 2026 to figure out how you're going to navigate and talk to your kids, about things that are uncomfortable, or they're seeing all these crazy pressures on the internet. And, for women to am I beautiful enough? Am I this? And seeing all these people flashing money and all this. I couldn't imagine growing up nowadays, especially in a time where when I was dating women back then, you met them in person. You met them at a bar. You met them at a function somewhere, and you got to organically formulate things. Now you got apps like Tinder and stuff. It's kind of like you're fucking fine tailoring who you want to date. And to have a kid growing up in a time period like this, where you see videos, like we see videos now on the internet that we should never be seeing, all these political riots and stuff like that, and people doing all this crazy shit, and how things are so readily available for you at the click of a button. It's like the most scariest fucking shit ever. And it's probably harder to raise a kid now more than ever. And more importantly, safety-wise, because we're exposed to all this stuff, I'm frightened as a parent. I don't want nobody babysitting my kid, because you're seeing all these stories pop up and how people are molesting all these people and all this shit. And you're like, you want somebody to watch it? You don't even know who fucking people are. You really, truly don't know somebody anymore. It's fucking absolutely frightening. And I don't know, man. I don't know what to do anymore, but it's, to raise a kid nowadays, it's very tough, especially, when they have the iPad and the iPhone, all this stuff. But what are you going to do? Take it away from them? You can't. You have to let these kids have this technology. Otherwise, there's going to be too far of a gap between them and the kids they're going to school with. And you can't let them feel that sort of rejection. You just have to teach them appropriate moderation, because these kids, they're good. They have this technology, and it's beneficial to them at the same time as it's detrimental to them. So you have to figure out a way to balance the screen time and balance this. And dude, that's something I learn every day. It's like, I don't know what to fucking do anymore. I'm very worried. And now my kid's only 7. Bro, I think about my kid being 13, 14 when he goes into high school and they're going through puberty, and they don't know, and my son doesn't know how to deal with his hormones when he's getting excited for a female or whatever it is that he's interested in. It's like, what do you do? How do you tell your kid about the birds and the bees? Like, I never thought I'd have to think about that shit. How to be, how to use contraceptives and how to be mindful and not do drugs. Dude, it's such... Being a parent is such an overwhelming experience. I really, truly do not know what to do. But I wouldn't take it back for the world. My son is so incredible. And the one thing that ruins me every day is that my mother never got to meet him. And she would have been, not to throw shade at the 3 grandparents that are here right now, but if my mom knew my kid, it'd be a totally different ball game. She would love him so much. It ruins me every day. It ruins me every fucking day that she'll never get to meet him and get to experience him, and he'll never get to experience her. I'm gonna try to keep it together and not cry, but it's the truth. The love that she would have showed him, the lessons she would have taught him. It's just, it's fucking, I don't know. It's something hard that I deal with frequently, I don't know, man. Maybe, but anyway, a lot of people ask me all the time, will you have more kids? You going to give Max a sibling? That's probably the hugest topic of anybody that asks me. And, everybody throws that shit at my wife and I. And the answer is no. I wish I could. If I had a village, if I really had a village, I would have another kid. But you're supposed to sacrifice, right? But where does that end? You could sacrifice, but you have to be mindful as well. You can't just sacrifice and not realize you're going to ruin your fucking marriage. You have to know with what you're able to withstand. And for me and my wife, us having a kid, we realize what we can take, what we can't take. And us having a kid, we just got comfortable. My son, we've been comfortable for a couple of years, but he shits, eats, piss, talks, all this stuff. All the hard stuff is now mostly over with for the most part. And, we know what's going on and we can navigate through. And then we have my dad go watch him now. This stuff, we go on date nights, finally go to concerts. We weathered that storm, because let's be honest, I can't tell you how many in this day and age, relationships don't last like they used to, Papa. I can't tell you how many dudes have had kids with women, and before that first year is over, they're out and they leave these women in the dust because it's fucking hard. I told you, those first 2 years were insane for me and my wife. And luckily we made it past it. Doesn't make it any easier now. We still go through problems because we're only human, but it's like, it's so fucking difficult. And, the failure rate of marriages is insane. I mean, I can't tell you on two hands how many couples and people that I know now that get married, have a kid, and they're done in the first year. Literally, like the first year, they're gone because it's just with social media and all this temptation, all this stuff, and you seeing all these fucking videos that are wrongfully influencing your brain. It's just our brains aren't designed to intake all this information. It's not. We shouldn't be dealing with all this, and it happens, and everybody gets fucking screwed up. And so no, I won't have any more kids. If it happens by mistake, that's different. And I'll deal with it and I will sacrifice then. But I feel bad. My son really wants to have a brother or sister, and he'd be such a good big brother. But I can't, man. I can't. It's me and my wife. We realized we can't. We want to stay married. My wife and I love each other. We want to stay married, and we know our threshold. And we met it with one kid. We have two. Me and my wife are too furious and too independent to have another kid, to throw another wrench in us like that, in our freedom and our sanity. We can't do it. It'd be too hard on us. So no, I don't think we're gonna have another one. I feel bad. I'm sorry for Max. So my wife's been bugging me to get a cat. I like cats. I hate dogs. I don't like pets though because I have too many collectibles. I told you, too high maintenance. Too much of a bitch. But my wife really wants a cat. So you got to have compromise when you're in a relationship. Not one person should be more dominant than the other. You should work together always to come to a solution. And, the biggest thing, before I wrap this up, the biggest thing that I fear now that I have a son is death. I fear it because when I have my son now that I have him, I've been dreaming of him my whole life. And I hold him and I look at him, and I'm a very affectionate guy. And, I know one day my son might not want to hug me as much as he does anymore. And he's going to become a teenager, and I have to accept that. It hurts me thinking that, but I have to accept that. I see him, I hug him, I kiss him, and I often look at him when he's watching TV, and I just have him on my lap, and I'm looking at his eyes. I can't believe you're mine. That's what I say. And then at night, when I lay him down, I lay down to sleep with him. Me and my wife will lay down next to him. When I'm home on the weekend, it'll be me. During the week is my wife. Lay down till he falls asleep, and then we leave the room. I love that. I don't want it to end. And life, I lost my mom at a young age. Life is so short. I want to live forever. I look at my kids' eyes and I don't want to die because I want to be able to live with my son forever. And it's the hardest shit. It's the hardest shit. That's probably the hardest part of being a parent, is realizing that one day you're going to leave this earth, and to not be able to see my son and be able to be his parent is horrifying. But I can't focus on that. I can't. I have to just realize life is life, and that's probably what makes it so beautiful, is that it's so short. So you have to really enjoy the moments. And it's tough because as a parent, you're going to get upset at your kid because it's fucking hard, dude. It's okay to be upset. It's all right. We're all human. But if you get mad 30 times, if you could at least cherish one of those moments, it's better than none. And you have to just deal with that and understand life is a gift, and you have to pass that gift on to your seed. And with that, we conclude this podcast. Thank you so much for listening. This is my perspective, small perspective, because I could keep going, on being a parent And I love you all. I love my son. This is for you. I want you to know, Maximus, how much your mother and I love you. And this is just what my perspective on what it was like and how we weathered the storm. That's all. And one day you're going to hear this and just know that you're the best thing that ever happened to me. I wouldn't pick my life any other way. I love you so much. Thank you all for listening to this. This is Parenthood, my third solo episode. I love y'all. This is my son's birth month, April 2026. He was born on April 1st, 2019. He is 7 years old now. This is dedicated to you. I love you, my boy. Keep inspiring me and keep teaching me to be a better me. I love you, and I can't wait to see what you become as a grown man. I love you. Love you all. To all my parents out there, I love y'all. Peace.